Hello. Today we're going to look at a few happenings in industry, new models, new data sets and eval sets coming out, and a few new tools that have been released or that could be useful and I just happen to have discovered in the last 2 weeks. So, first news. Meta is releasing a new chip. They say our next generation meta training and inference accelerator. All of these big companies are starting to build their own hardware for deep learning. Sumith gives the details right here. 708 teraflops per second on in8, over 300 teraflops per second on bfloat 16. A lot of RAM on these chips, as you can see. 128 gigabytes of memory on these chips, and they're fairly low wattage. So these are really data center chips that can be really scaled up in that. Very excited to see all of these big companies making their own chips. I do think, while I think NVIDIA is a cool company, I do think a bit of competition, a bit more competition in that area will serve everyone quite well. What I also love is this person at the beginning, like the movement they do. Look at that. Yeah. How is that? Did they this looks so generated. It looks incredibly no? Yeah. Nah, I don't know. I can't tell anymore. Like the movement is very clunky. It could be that they just told that person, like, how about you move very clunkily and we'll make like a really unfortunate cut so you jump to this position. All right, in other hardware news, Google DeepMind has released a video on what they call ALOHA Unleashed. This is for low-cost robots. So I, from eyesight, cannot estimate the cost of robots, but I am being told these are low-cost robots. Now, low-cost robots in comparison to high-cost robots, what I guess the difference is just the kind of accuracy of the motors and actuators and so on. So being able to do a lot of tasks with low-cost robots where you need a lot of, like, you need perception, you need coordination, you need a bit of correction and a lot of flexibility for the motors and actuators and so on, not doing exactly what you want. So teaching them skills, especially skills like this, where they pick up a piece of fabric that is not, you can't pre-program these movements. So this is fairly impressive, I have to say. I'm not into robotics. I don't know how that compares to state-of-the-art or whether that is state-of-the-art, but yeah, I find it incredibly cool. So here they test it on very different shirt colors. They tested on sweaters. The policy was never trained on an adult-sized shirt or any type of sweaters, but still robots managed to do it. Insertion tasks and so on. So very cool. I really like the advancements in robotics that are coming out of the combination of sort of hardware and machine learning. Apple signs a deal with Shutterstock, apparently $50 million to access images for AI training. Now, the interesting part I find is actually how much they pay per image. So they pay up to $1 to $2 per image, $2 to $4 per short video, and $100 to $300 per hour of long video. You probably wouldn't pay that much if you just scrape data, but this is supposed to be very high quality data. So this fits into the bucket of, we'll train with this at the end to really make it high quality, or we may only train with this data. If you had asked me, I would have for sure said they probably pay, I don't know, a single-digit amount of cents per image or something like this. $1 to $2 seems to be quite a good price for an image. On the other hand, of course, you can make the argument that once such an image goes into an AI model, and sufficiently many of them do, then you will never, ever need images like that ever again. So making an image and then getting $2 for it and then never again anything else, that's, I guess, a different way of looking at it. I just found it interesting what the price ranges of these things are, especially also the quite significant prices for long video. Tolga Bilge tweeting out this article: OpenAI researchers, including ally of Sutskever, fired for alleged leaking of information. Industrial espionage is a thing. People are leaking stuff. We don't know too much more, except that one was a friend of Ilya. Oh yeah, here is even explicit. Was also an ally of Ilya Sutskever, who participated in a failed effort to force out OpenAI. I'll go out of a limb here and say that these two topics probably have nothing to do with each other, but the media is trying very hard to make them so. Adobe's ethical Firefly AI was trained on Midjourney images. Wasn't there a story where apparently Midjourney suspended all stability employees for scraping their images? You think that was just like Adobe in a mustache and saying they're from Stability, downloading all of them? Could be. It's a good source of data, so why wouldn't you tap that? Funny though, if company promotes this tool as safe from content scraped from the internet. No, but it is true. It's not. I guess what they actually intended to do was not violate any copyright, and therefore scraping generated but highly curated images, right, which Midjourney is, because people actually select which one they want, is a really good strategy. Of course, probably against all of Midjourney's terms of service, but you know, really good. And lastly, Justin Trudeau announces $2.4 billion for AI-related investments. Canada investing into AI-related things. AI-related could mean almost anything. Also, nice picture of Joshua Benjo in the background. Obviously very cool that governments are supportive of sort of AI tech and whatnot. The bulk of that $2 billion is going into a fund that will aim to provide access to computing capabilities and technical infrastructure. So brum 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 GPU brum brum brum. I think it's cool. I think it's excellent. Still, since it's government money, there's going to be a large part of sort of politicking around who gets what and so on, who gets access to what. I do hope Canada will be able to distribute that wisely, or at least I hope so. Just give it all to Joshua. He'll know what to do. All right, a few models and datasets which will zoom through in relatively quick fashion. Google DeepMind releasing RecurrentGemma. RecurrentGemma is a Gemma model that has a recurrent mechanism according to Google's new Griffin architecture. So linear recurrences with local attention, and that will result in essentially a model that can go on and on and on and have technically a infinite / really large context size. Then also released CodeGemma, also by Google, which is a Gemma model fine-tuned on or specialized in code. Also open, Mistral's new announcement of an 8x22b model. So this is a mixture of expert model that is larger than the previous ones they've released, about 3 times as large, as you can see right here. Total of 141 billion parameters, of which only 39 are active for each forward pass of a particular token. Obviously, for different ones, different experts are active and so on. But still very cool, truly open, Apache 2 licensed, excellent, performing really well. And alongside that, they're releasing tokenizers, which go beyond the usual text to tokens, adding parsing of tools and structured conversation. On top of that, people have already done fine tunes and whatnot. This one is of particular interest. This is distilling essentially mixture of experts model into a single model, going from 8 times 22 billion parameters into a single dense 22 billion parameter model, trying to keep up its capabilities. There is already a version 2 or version 0.2 of that, yes, there is, and maybe there is even a version 0.3 by the time then that this video comes out. So people doing all kinds of stuff with that. I do like the densification right here, because it means it's accessible to people with lower hardware, because even if only a few parameters are active for each kind of token, you still need to load up the parameters somewhere of the big model, and if the densification helps to bring that down, it's very cool. Wizard LM announces Wizard LM2. Wizard LM2 comes in different sizes, notably 8x22b and other sizes. Who knows what this is kind of a fine-tuned version of. Wizard LM is, among other things, famous for their data generation and training system, which they have not perfected, but really pushed ahead. And the Wizard LM models tend to be performing really well on benchmarks, and also people tend to like them quite a bit. Those are available. Hugging Face releasing Idifix 2, which is, they claim, the strongest vision language model below 10 billion parameters. Vision language models are obviously important, but I'm not an expert on them. I don't know what's state of the art, what's not. This categorization here, to me, it seems like a bit that where universities have to go like, we are the best university on the West Coast, under 5,000 people, with at least 2 cows on the premises, but we're the best among those. But needless to say, very cool that we get also vision language models, obviously released under Apache 2 license. More and more open source models. I'm very happy about that. Along that, RWKV 6 World released. This is yet another iteration of RWKV that improves over the last iterations. I've done a video on RWKV. If you want to check that out, this is a different architecture than a standard transformer, including very kind of recurrent elements, and therefore being able to go for longer context. The world part specifically means that it's been trained on many different languages, about 70% English, 15% multilingual human, and 15% multilingual computer language. Pile T5 is an interesting project. This is by ALOHA AI. T5 is indeed, they say it here, it's one of the most widely used models in the NLP community. T5, even though it's come out in ancient times in 2019, it is still one of the kind of go-to models for people training small stuff, people training in supervised fashion, and so on. And so far, people have always used a T5 variant that was fairly close to the original release, but now this updated T5 variant has been trained for, I believe, about double the tokens of the original T5, is a much stronger base model, and therefore could benefit all of those applications at the same time. Very cool. There's also a new variant of Zephyr, which is a fine-tune of the new Mistral model. They have adopted a new naming convention. The naming convention being you first list the total parameters, then you list the active parameters, and then kind of the version of the model. This is an instruction following model trained to act as helpful assistance, and is done so via this ORPO method, which is called odds ratio preference optimization. Haven't looked too well into these things, but this seems to be a trend in recent times that people are exploring beyond things like proximal policy optimization for doing reinforcement learning. So going beyond that, trying direct preference optimization, trying stuff like this, odds ratio preference optimization. Maybe that was that. Odds ratio preference, yes. Good video topics, I guess, looking into these things. I'll keep it in mind. And there's already a GGUF for that in various quantizations who want to load that on very slick hardware. Parler TTS also releasing a new Apache 2 licensed text-to-speech model focused on maximum controllability. You can control a lot of things here via what's called voice prompts. You can control pitch, speed, gender, noise levels, emotion characteristics, and more. Very excellent. Again, I will not do any sound in these videos because I am sound YouTube, no. We've seen Phi 3 being released, but also from Microsoft and collaborators. This is Row 1. And where the point of Phi 3 is saying, hey, let's get really high quality data, the point of Row 1 is saying, hey, maybe not all of these tokens are equally important. Therefore, what Row 1 does is it leverages a helper model to determine how important each token is. That itself is obviously a language model, I think, estimating perplexity of tokens and so on. So you say, well, if a token is really in place, like that's really the correct token, then it should have more weight. And if the token is kind of shady, then obviously we shouldn't put as much of a loss on it when we predict it in the wrong way. You can argue this is not useful because you already need kind of a language model to assess whether tokens are even important or not. I do think it's very interesting to see that if you knew which tokens were important, you could adjust the loss and actually put more weight onto some tokens and therefore train much faster to much better levels. And then in a secondary step, you could still say, well, is there something else rather than having sort of a fully trained language model that I can use to make that adjustment? I do like this type of research where you kind of just tackle one part of the problem and you just consult an oracle for the other part, because it means you're kind of in this middle ground of usefulness where, yes, the idea and the learnings are useful, but the method itself really isn't useful in practice, or maybe limited. It's limited useful. That's a good spot for academics, honestly. Like, that's a good spot to do really interesting research that is not that likely to be scooped by industry, obviously, of course. Saying that, this paper is partially by Microsoft. Ferret-UI is by Apple. So Apple, we see publishing more and more models, more and more papers, and so on. This time they are publishing about a UI language model called Ferret-UI. Yeah, very cool. Obviously, it does make a lot of sense that Apple would go into directions like this, like understanding of screens and things like this. They have a wide variety of data collected right here and making different things possible. In this paper, we present Ferret-UI, a new multimodal LLM tailored for enhancing the understanding of mobile UI screens, equipped with referring, grounding, and reasoning capabilities. Very cool. Hello, it's me from the future. Here's what happened. I recorded all of this last week, and then the recording bugs out. So the recording no longer exists. So we'll do this now. We'll do it live. We'll go through it quickly but accurately, and I'll bring you the updates of last week. I know there's like a new GPT-2 instruct model around that is said to be really good, and people think it's GPT 4.5 or GPT-5 or something like this, and it's super duper mysterious and nobody really knows. We'll get to that. Today, we're just going to go through some other cool models and tools and data sets and so on. All right, so Samba COE by Samba Nova is an iteration on composition of expert model. Now, this is not mixture of experts, which is what you do within one transformer layer, like within the feed-forward layer where you route to different experts. This is rather using different models and having like a router dynamically assign tasks to these models. So they combine different models and then they have a routing strategy to route them to these different models. It's kind of like an ensemble model, and that performs better than the models individually. So very cool. Vasa by Microsoft is probably as good a deepfake model as you've seen so far. So this will do from a single picture. It will do like lip syncing and will move the picture and so on. And they do look extremely good. And yeah, this is from a single picture of the person. So very, I would say kind of insane. Again, the progress on this, I know obviously a lot of work has gone into this, but it does take, like you can see, it's sort of the shape gets a bit bent like at the side of the head and so on, but pretty crazy. 12 Labs has released a technical report on Pegasus 1, which is a vision language model. However, I don't think the model is out. So for now, this is a paper and the benchmark and so on. Although obviously new research coming out is still very cool. Yeah, the technical report can be accessed. On the other hand, Recca also having a new paper out on multimodal language models. Again, they are not available. So both 12 Labs and Recca, as far as I'm informed, they are in the business of making money with these models and therefore don't give them out, but they do publish about them. I'm usually not an advertising outlet, but I do recognize that I report on OpenAI, so might as well report on other stuff happening. These models, they do perform pretty well comparatively to other models, so they might be on a good path here. At least like competition to the other vendors is good, right? We can all agree on that. there is a paper called Introducing the V0.5 of the AI Safety Benchmark from ML Commons, so ML Commons community project. And this is a benchmark on AI safety, a taxonomy of 13 hazard categories and various tests around them. The benchmark is not yet complete, but the paper outlines some of the benchmark as well as the plan for achieving the final benchmark to sort of test models in the realm of AI safety. Very cool that more community sourced projects are coming up with excellent things to do. I do think benchmarks, wide-ranging benchmarks, is definitely one of the good cases for a community project, because there's a low barrier of entry, let's say. A lot of people can contribute simultaneously and so on. So I think these suit themselves very well, and they are quite useful going forward, or a lot of them are. There is research, this is by Alan Jacobi, saying we've just evaluated Gemini 1.5 Pro on our benchmark in long context. So this is a benchmark on long context, looking a bit into the current models that exist. As you can see right here, GPT-4, the newest variants, are still exceeding the other models in accuracy in longer context, although you can see the context size here goes up to 3,000 tokens and not like the whatever thousands and thousands or even millions, 1 million token of Gemini 1.5 Pro. This is a benchmark that specifically measures long context understanding, so that's why they are interested in that. So both the benchmark and the results are pretty cool. I'll link them in the description. Audio Dialogues is a data set for audio and music understanding. This is literally, as far as I understand, a dialogue about audio, or a dialogue about music and sounds and something like this. So you'd have something like a sound of a siren, sound of traffic noise, roadway noise, and so on. And then there is a dialogue about that. Like, what does the audio sound like? An ambulance siren echoes while traffic noise fades, and engine revs, and so on. So this is could be used for instruction tuning of language sound models or something like this. This could then be used to assist hearing impaired people to converse about what things sound like or what's around them or something like this. Potentially also autonomous robots, vehicles, and whatnot. So, although I would guess these could just learn something direct from the sound, but probably if you get that to language, then you can use the language with other language models to do some more high-level planning and so on. So very cool. OS World is a very interesting environment. So this is an environment like you know from the OpenAI Gym environment. And it's not long called OpenAI Gym, just called Gym now. But these reinforcement learning environments where you interact with a world, and the world in this case is a computer operating system configured to be in some state. So using this framework, you can set up a situation where you're like, okay, I want a Ubuntu, and I want there to be these icons on the desktop, and I want whatever OpenOffice or LibreOffice to be open like so. And then you have a task that you need to fulfill in that. Definitely having an environment like this will allow us to train better models that achieve some sort of tasks for you interacting with a computer. So this leads to agents that do computer tasks for you, if you will, like navigate to some website, using some app to do something or so. I do think that's quite a promising path forward, because if you think about it, UIs, be that of apps or of websites, are specifically made so that humans from like a non-technical perspective can interact with machines. That's literally what a user interface is. So having models understand user interfaces in terms of what they do, what can be achieved with them, will make that bridge between humans and computers even broader, which means that the communication with the computers can be even more natural than it already is if you're using a UI. But literally, you let your agent operate the UI for you. OpenEQA is a data set, as far as I understand, in in embedded question answering. So that, for example, having these scenes and asking questions about the scenes, and then the model being able to understand, for example, something about episodic memory. Where did I leave my badge? And if you analyze the entire recording, you can see, hey, you left your badge at the table. Did I close the fridge? So the model needs to recognize, okay, where is the fridge? What is the fridge? What's the state? And so on, and have an idea of sort of 3D stuff and stuff in 3D environments. So they are releasing the Open Vocabulary Embodied Question Answering Benchmark, which measures an AI agent's understanding of physical spaces with questions like, where did I leave my badge? We benchmarked state-of-the-art vision and language models, found a significant gap between human-level performance and even the best models. In fact, for questions that require spatial understanding, today's VLMs are nearly blind. Access to visual contents provide no significant improvement over language-only models. That's brutal. We hope releasing OpenEQA will help motivate and facilitate open research into helping AI agents understand and communicate about the world it sees, an essential component for artificial general intelligence. True, especially the fact that current vision language models are not really a big help in these kinds of tasks is astounding to me. I would have guessed that they are more useful in these kind of scenarios. So lots to do. Google DeepMind releases a paper on best practices and lessons learned on synthetic data for language models. This is more, as you can guess, more of a kind of report, maybe with some suggestions and what they've learned. If synthetic data is of interest to you, and for many people nowadays it is, this could be an important resource to consider. Ruler is a benchmark for also assessing what they call the real context size of a long context language model. So obviously on a technical level, you can always determine the context size by some maximum, be that maximum position embeddings or maximum that fits into some, I don't know, memory or something like this, or the maximum a model has been trained on, like the maximum length of sequences it has been trained on. However, none of these actually mean that the model learns to work with that long context. So this paper asks, what's the real context size? They say there is this needle in a haystack test, which examines the ability to retrieve a piece of information from long distractor texts that has been widely adopted to evaluate long context language models. So this is, you have a whole bunch of text that's all kind of meaningless, and you hide some piece of information in there, and at the end you ask about that piece of information, and if the model can answer correctly, then you know it has sort of paid attention to that, and then you try to see at which length, context, and where you hide that needle, does it break down. However, they say this is indicative of only a superficial form of long context understanding. To provide a more comprehensive evaluation, we create a new synthetic benchmark called Ruler with flexible configurations for customized sequence length and task complexity. Essentially, they're saying it's too easy, right? You don't really understand long context just because you're able to like find the one piece, because at the same time, the needle in a haystack test is essentially ignoring everything else. And ignoring lots of stuff is a lot easier than integrating lots of stuff. Like you would, if I told you I have one model that successfully can ignore most of 100,000 tokens, and I have the other model that can successfully do multi-hop reasoning across 100,000 tokens, even though their technical context length is 100,000 tokens, and even both may pass the needle in a haystack test for 100,000 tokens, you would still prefer the latter model, because that seems a lot more powerful using that long context. That's what this paper is essentially saying is the problem, and their new benchmark tests a bit more complex tasks. Aman Sanger has tweeted or X'd out that SWE Bench is probably contaminated for frontier models. SWE Bench is a benchmark that measures software engineering capabilities largely. For example, hey, here is a GitHub issue and the corresponding repository. Please fix the GitHub issue, or something like this in various degrees. There are a couple of these data sets. They all go along similar lines. And this person tweets out that given only the name of a pull request in the dataset, Claude 3 Opus already knows the correct function to modify. Now, this could be coincidence, but it would be like a giant, like a pretty big coincidence. So at least Claude 3 will probably have seen the repository itself during training, if not even actually seen the pull request that is to be implemented here. So it's sort of looking at the solution. If you train on that, sort of looking at the solution of one task of this benchmark. So if you're in this space, I guess just be aware. I guess that's all you can do. XAI, or well, they call themselves XAI, which is also Twitter AI. They release real-world QA. This is a data set of pictures, and pictures mostly taken by anonymized images taken from vehicles. I don't know if they're actually from vehicle cameras or if it's just people photographing out of vehicles or dash cams. Could be all of it, but as far as the dataset looks, it's either dash cams or actually mounted cameras on the outside of vehicles, and there will be questions along with them and corresponding answer. For example, is there a green traffic light ahead? A yes, B, no. They even have the please answer only with the letter. They even have the necessary multiple choice prompt in here. So a lot of questions about road situation understanding and related things. Reader is a service, so it's a code base, but it's also a deployed service where you can send a website. This is by Gina AI. You can send the website there. Essentially, you have this part of the URL, and then you add the actual URL, for example, that here. And what you'll get back is you'll get an LLM friendly consumable variant of that website. Langstream is an alternative to libraries like LangChain, and they call themselves a lighter alternative to LangChain for building LLM applications probably. Instead of having a massive amount of features and classes, Langstream focuses on a single small core that is easy to learn, easy to adapt, well documented, fully typed, and truly composable with streams instead of chains as the building block. Autocode Rover is another coding agent, I would say, titled Autonomous Program Improvement. This is a fully automated approach for resolving GitHub issues where LLMs are combined with analysis and debugging capabilities to prioritize patch locations, ultimately leading to a patch. This is trained on SWE Bench, with which we've previously were cautious about, but still, I mean, so all the others are also evaluated on that. So, yeah. So specifically targeted at GitHub issue resolution. A lot of these code models are now popping up, which is really interesting because I think coding is one of the areas where these LLMs are definitely or have been so far quite useful, like exceedingly useful compared to other use cases. There's also a paper on that available if you want to read more into that. Friend is an AI wearable with 24 hours battery on a single charge. Now, I know many of you will have seen Marques Brownlee's review of the Humane AI pin and of the Rabbit R1 and so on, and calling them all trash. I guess because at the price point where they sell at, they kind of are. This, however, it's a bit the same, but it's fully open source. So this is more the DIY approach where you buy the hardware, you build the firmware, you install that. It's quite cheap, and everyone works together to make this, to improve this over time. So definitely don't get this if you are expecting a finished product that is super duper and so on. This is essentially a thing that you wear that kind of records everything you do, with the idea that other people or you build additional software that kind of works with those recordings. So very, very DIY, very, very hackery, very, very not producty. WhisperKit V060 dropped yesterday. I'm highlighting this because there's a recent trend of bringing models to Macs and to the M chips. And as a matter of fact, a lot of these models, if you port them correctly, they run really fast. So I don't know. I have a MacBook, so I think that's really cool. So more and more models are coming to MacBooks under MLX, and that's excellent. Also, this one right here, you can see we are inferencing a Mistral 7B at 4-bit quantization on an M2 Ultra at 100 tokens per second. That's pretty insane. And new Gemma instruct models also on MLX, getting about 20 tokens per second on an M1 Air. So this is not even like a fully super spec'd out Mac. This is a MacBook Air, and it's going vroom. And I find that pretty cool, not just because it's technically interesting, but also because it brings this tech to a lot more places. Like local inference is still going to be, even though cloud models are obviously still better and so on, but local inference is going to have a lot of very cool applications, and being able to do them on like a regular laptop with a regular chip is going to open up so many things. I think the future is going to be very cool. I'm not ideologically opposed to cloud models and whatnot. I think having the option to choose a local model, because A, it's private, and B, it's really fast. There's no delay. Response time is instant. And then maybe for other use cases, dispatch to the cloud when you can wait for longer. I think having the options are absolutely great. And then lastly, TorchTune is a library to fine-tune LLMs using PyTorch. So this is a more torchy library, because so far libraries for fine-tuning have been, let's say, third-party to PyTorch. Now, not that that's bad, but you had to integrate. You had to do the Hugging Face trainer or something like this. And this here is native as you'll get from PyTorch. So it's easily extendable. It integrates with a lot of different stuff, which is true to the PyTorch spirit, I guess, of being a bit of the base layer of all of the rest. Has anyone heard of TensorFlow lately? I don't know. I guess the people at Google are now using JAX anyway. So, all right, that's it for this series. We'll see each other soon, and please stay hydrated. Bye bye.